attention. Okay. Greetings to Melang Sanbonani, Goeiemorgen. A very, very warm welcome to today's day 2 of the Youth Imbizo, Youth Job Imbizos, hosted by SAYAC. I go by the name of Zintle Khalek. And to begin us off, I'd like to open up with a quote from Malcolm X that says that the future belongs to those who prepare for it today. And with that being said, I welcome you all to this amazing, amazing, impactful event where I really hope you will gain so much knowledge, skills, most importantly, walk out with that urge to really do more, because this country is ours. If we don't take it up, who will? So just to announce some few house rules, please can all the phones be on silent, and when the speakers are coming up, please may they be silent. For now, I'm gonna hand over to my lovely co-host, Intombi Mzulu, on my left.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. I need a lively response. It's a Saturday, we're in Cape Town. Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today. Igama lami is Thandiwe Msomi. I serve as the National Spokesperson and Communications Manager of this very organization, SAYAC. And indeed, we are having day 2 today after a very informative first day of our Youth Jobs Imbizo. The whole purpose of us being here today is because our country is at a tipping point. We have a 75% youth unemployment rate. That means a lot of young people are sitting at home, not being able to exercise a fundamental right of being able to work and be productive in this economy. And so the very purpose of us being here today is to get together players from the private sector as well as government to discuss what policies we need to ensure that we create a country where every human being can fulfill their potential and contribute to this economy, not just locally, but also globally. So as you tune into the conversations today, think about that, have that in mind, ask questions. It's very rare to get a Minister of Mineral Resources or someone who's in decision making in a forum with young people in the house. So take up the opportunity to interact with those in power, take up the opportunity to network as well. You never know, you might meet your next employer here, your next, romantic partner. Things happen. so take up the opportunity and definitely enjoy the event. Of course, if you have any comments throughout the day, please do interact with us on social media, especially on Twitter. We are at the SA Youth Economic Council, and use the hashtag YouthJobsImbizo if you have any questions to submit or comments, and my co-host and myself will make sure that we read that all throughout the day. So without further ado, I think we're going to kickstart off the session today, or today's event rather, with an official welcome from our very own Mongameli, Kanakana Mutsanani.
Forward with mass job opportunities for young people, forward. Forward with mass business opportunities for young people, forward. Good morning, colleagues. I go by the name of Mudzanani Kanakana, and I happen to serve as the president of the South African Youth Economic Council. Allow me to officially take this opportunity to firstly welcome all of you. I think I must extend a thankful gratitude to all young people who hail from the city of Cape Town, who took off their time on such a lovely weekend to come and participate in this meaningful Youth Jobs Imbizo. Now allow me to equally brief you guys about the South African Youth Economic Council and why we thought it would be best for us to convene a Youth Jobs Imbizo. So as a council, what we do is advocacy, policy work, but most importantly, interactions and engagements with government and private stakeholders to ensure that young people are included in strategic areas of focus in our economy. That is why we exist as a council, and we will continue to make sure that we become that bridge between private players, government, and young people of South Africa to address the 74% youth unemployment crisis. Above and beyond that, today's Imbizo must also serve as an opportunity for young entrepreneurs in the city of Cape Town, to young professionals, those who are being underpaid in their internships. We hope you are going to use these opportunities to get full-time jobs that pay you well, because you do have strategic players in the room. But also, we want to serve as a bridge to young students in Cape Town. We will be introducing you guys to strategic potential employers who should give you job opportunities upon completion of your studies. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it is of paramount importance to state that in this event, we've got colleagues from the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. In this event, we've got colleagues from the Petroleum Agency of South Africa. In this event, we've got colleagues from Mintech. In this event, we've got the NYDA in the room. So I encourage all of us to network. I encourage all of us to not be afraid of going and exchanging our business contacts and making sure that we know who is sitting next to us. And please make sure that you're not sitting next to the person you came with. Leave with a brand new contact that will potentially assist you in empowering yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, before I officially declare this council session open, I have the responsibility of saying to every young person who is in this room that this council wants you to aspire to become a better person. Through our initiatives, we will continue to reaffirm to a young person in Langa that it is possible to improve your living conditions. It is possible for you to become a better individual. As an example, I'm going to use two colleagues. We have Avuyile here. Avuyile, my brother, can you please stand up? Avuyile hails all the way from Butterworth, Etuwa in the Eastern Cape. Today, Avuyile serves as a chief economist in the DMRE. And he, listen, before you give him a round of applause, he holds a Master's of Commerce from the University of Beijing in China. Above and beyond that, we have Nozuko from Mintech. Nozuko, could you please just rise up? Over there, we have our colleague, Nozuko from Mintech. She holds an MSc in mining engineering from Wits University. Please give her a round of applause. Why am I doing this? I am doing this to show you guys that the same faces we have in this room are not going to be leaders of tomorrow. They must lead today and now. I am doing this to show each and every single private and government sector player who is in this very room that young people are capable. Young people meet the criteria of contributing meaningfully in this economy. And we must be given those job opportunities. We must be considered when those business deals are being closed. Dr. Alpha is here. He sits as the secretary in the Presidential Climate Committee. So he must have a glimpse of, when they start distributing that financial empowerment boost they got from COP26, they must consider young people in those disbursements because young people are capable. Young people cannot continue to be unemployed when they are skilled, when they are capable, and when they have the acumen to do the job and to meaningfully contribute in our economy. So as a council, ladies and gentlemen, we want to consistently reaffirm to every young person who is in the room that even if you are from Langa, you are capable of ensuring that you become the next Elon Musk. You are capable of meaningfully contributing in the ICT sector. You are capable of making a contribution in the mining sector. Mr. Karim, who is the CEO of the NYDA here, we always have conversations with him that when he thinks of empowering a young person from Khayelitsha, he must not think of giving them 50,000 rand so they can go and sell fruits and vegetables in a small corner. But he must think of how can we capacitate the NYDA to equip and skill young people so that they can go and contribute in the coal mining space, so that they can go and contribute in the ICT sector. These critical sectors of our economy must not be a preserve for the minority. They must not be a preserve for the old. They must be a preserve for a young black girl who is being raised in Guguletu. And that is why we exist as a council. And that is what we intend and we will continue to do. Colleagues, before I sit down, allow me to introduce you to some of our council members. As I present their names, I would ask that they stand up so that you can see the structure of our council. We have with us the executive chairman of the council, Mr. Bonga Makanya, who has just recently graduated with a BCom in economics from the University of the Witwatersrand. Bonga, please rise up. We have the vice president and head of business, Mr. Lwazinto Mbela, who has also just recently graduated from the University of Witwatersrand. We have Ms. Neo Musala, who is our head of economic policy and research. Neo, she also holds a degree from the University of the Witwatersrand. In the room, we also have Mr. Kwanele Tusi, who is the purse of the council. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kwanele Tusi holds an honors in taxation from the University of Cape Town. Tusi. We have Ms. Zulaika Patel. Zulaika currently serves as our community outreach officer and head of transformation. She's over there at the door. To close it off, we have Ms. Mpapuri Chipiwa, who holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of the Western Cape. I think Ms. Mpapuri might not be in the room because she's dealing with the event and making sure that everything is settled. But lastly, we do have our spokesperson and communications manager, Ms. Thandi Wemsomi, who is also just so close to concluding her degree, but she'll be a graduate very soon from the University of the Witwatersrand. Star? There she is, there she is. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you can hear university, university, university. I must categorically state it that we hold the issue of TVET colleges very dear to our hearts. We believe that our economy needs more artisans so that we can officially conclude Midupi and Kusile. So we will be interacting with the NYDA on how do we empower young people who are in TVET colleges, how do we bring them to the work of the council, but most importantly, how do we craft and create artisans that are skilled to meaningfully contribute to our economy. Ladies and gentlemen, with the powers that are vested in me, allow me or grant me the opportunity to officially open the first session of the SAYEC Youth Jobs Imbizo. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Yo, you know when the president speaks, the room is already shaken. Are you guys ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Yeah, well, okay. So without further ado, next on our program is I'm going to read a message of support on behalf of the sponsors from Ms. Wang, who is the Senior Vice President of Nyan Chamber of Commerce and the CEO of Letukanya Pty Ltd. Okay, so it reads as follows. Dear distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to be here and to give a speech today at the Youth Employment Forum organized by SAYEC. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Wang Miswang. I'm currently the CEO of Letukanya Pty Ltd and a general manager at the South African Robam high-end kitchenware brand. I'd like to thank Mr. Bongani Makanya, the executive chairman of SAYEC, for inviting me here today to talk to you about job opportunities for the youth, as well as important roles at youth play in automation of the textile industry. I'll talk about the following 3 points. Firstly, I'll tell you of my experience of how to start from being an employee to entrepreneurship and job creator. Next, I'll share with you the developmental opportunities in the field of textile industry. And finally, I will talk about my vision, an industrial park, which will introduce and cultivate young entrepreneurs in South Africa to provide South Africans with opportunities and guidance, as well as help them be successful and achieve a brighter future. In 1993, my hometown, Xingmeng, began to recruit migrant workers in Micronesia. At that time, I was still very young. I started working from 8 a.m. every day with the full devotion. I gained my first experience that to be successful, you have to be very hardworking and persevere. 3 years later, I was promoted to be a supervisor in Lesotho. I found out that after becoming a supervisor, the ability to communicate with people and the level of English is very important. So I started to buy tapes to learn English from scratch. This made me feel that the second key element of success is also to consistently learn new things, to be capable, to communicate, and to be a team player. My performance was recognized as soon as I was promoted again to work in East London, South Africa. In 2007, with the help of my friends, I decided to start a business in Newcastle and started my own garment factory with a dozen of workers. Since I'm very familiar with this industry, I've been in this industry for more than 10 years. Soon, my business boomed, and I gradually had a chance to diversify my business. Therefore, to sum up, for a young person to start a business, you have to choose the industry that you're interested in, accumulate experience, thereafter constantly keep learning. There's no shortcut to success. It is nothing more than hard work and diligence. In my process of growth, I received a lot of help from the South African people. I think that it is high time to repay the kindness and assistance I gained from South Africa. I would like to train South African young people to pass on the skills I learned in the clothing industry as much as possible. Opportunities for the industry, intelligence, and youth. There is an old saying in China that clothing, food, house, and travel are important. Clothing has always been placed first in human life, as dressing and clothing is the most basic human need. In addition, I think that this is true of people all over the world, that everyone has a love for beauty. The process of making clothes is an authentic process. Therefore, the clothing industry will be a timeless industry because it is human nature is to seek beauty. The second opportunity I would like to address is the window of opportunity to make clothing industry in South Africa to go up in the value chain. For a long time, South Africa's local apparel market focuses on cheap and fast-moving consumer goods. Clothes with qualities are expensive and generally depends on the imports. According to statistics, high-end ready-to-wear clothing produced locally in South Africa accounts for less than 1 to 2% on total. There is a huge gap and window for opportunity for the development of the South African garments industry. In fact, we can work hard in the next 5 to 10 years to upgrade South Africa's garments in the value chain, as we would design, produce, and sell in South Africa. Made in South Africa is our ultimate pursuit. This is also highly consistent with the policies of the South African government. If we are to try to localize high-end, ready-to-wear products in South Africa, we need to nurture young local talent in fashion, designing, senior management, and so forth. I trust that young South Africans are also very talented to do that. My third opportunity lies in the application of smart technologies in the garment industry, a labor-intensive industry. Now that the world's textile is becoming more and more mature, we can quickly absorb the world's knowledges and realize the intelligent revolution of South Africa's garment industry. Surprisingly, the intelligent feature of the clothing industry is to improve the finished products rates and reduce the defective rates without reducing the number of workers. If smart technology is applied, the learning of advanced machine language, the agreement of processes, and the effective management of teams of all required advanced knowledge. Therefore, university graduates, once they enter the clothing industry, not only can they get started quickly, but they can also get promoted due to the high level of intelligent properties. I'd also like to mention in particular that due to the labor-intensive nature of the garments industry, it is currently one of the best industries to address South Africa's unemployment. The clothing industry can accommodate a great range of people at all different age groups. Therefore, I believe that to solve the current problem of unemployment in South Africa, we should vigorously revitalize the clothing industry and create more job opportunities in the industry. Lastly, for the third part, which addresses the vision of the industrial park and cultivation in South African talents. For an industry to achieve development, it must first establish a good benchmark. Especially under the impact of the pandemic, we should think about the reconstruction of industry standards after the pandemic. In the industrial park, we will establish the benchmark of the apparel industry, thus increase our international competitiveness to make the brand in South Africa go global. In the industrial park, I hope to set different branches and recruited young talent to be in charge of the garment production process. I hope to invite many young South Africans to join and lead. If a South African youth accomplished a work in a branch, he or she will be encouraged to go up in the ranks until they could run the whole business. The model is called cooperative entrepreneurship. That is when young people's careers are just starting. I hope to guide them, familiarize them with the processes of the industry, and become provident. My hope, after completing the challenges in the different sections, young people can finally take over the industrial park and it becomes a business of their own. At present, the unemployment rate in South Africa is very high. If we can build an industrial park, it will definitely promote a cluster effect of the industrial park. More and more factories or branches will join us. The cluster effect of the park will stay expanding until it reaches to an extent in the industrial park. I visualize accommodating 20,000 to 30,000 jobs. In this way, we can solve a large part of the employment problem and truly give back to society. Lastly, closing remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, I came to South Africa in my early 20s, and I've worked hard to get where I am today. During the process, I got help from many South Africans, and I think that the greatest value of a person is that she passes on what she learns in life. We have a saying in China that translates to, we should repay the kindness we received from people and make kindness and prosperity sustainable. I am truly grateful from the help that I received from South Africa. Therefore, I feel it is my responsibility to create more jobs for South Africans. This is my original intent, to build this industrial park. And I'd like South African garment industry to become more competitive and make a contribution in the South African society. I thank you. Up next, I would like to call my co-host, Usta, who will introduce you to the next segment of the program.
Why am I not getting a round of applause? I'm just joking. So how many students do we have in the house today? Just raise your hands. So we've got quite a few students. Unemployed graduates, where are you? My council members must put their hands up. Yeah, it's a huge issue of trying to connect graduates or students with future employment opportunities, and organizations that try bridge that gap and do a bit of work to make the lives of talented students who are gifted academically try find work in the workplace. And so we are very pleased and honored today to have an organization called GradStar, and they run a program to recognize the top 100 university students across South Africa and connect them with potential employers as well as business mentors. And so to give us a brief overview of what the organization does, I'd like to call upon to the stage Ms. Laura Barker.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for that warm welcome. And thank you so much to SAIEC for giving us this opportunity to present what we do to try and improve the employment landscape for the South African youth of today. We only recently formed a partnership with SAIC, but we're delighted to be in contact with them, to work with them. We hope we can work together to improve the future for all youth in South Africa. And I think from what you've seen today, even the leadership board of SAIC, what incredibly talented youth. South Africa has talented youth. It's merely the opportunities that we need to find for them. And I think this is where we try to come in. We've developed a solution called GradStar, which tries to democratize access to opportunity. I think our friend Madzanani mentioned earlier that people from rural areas, even some of the less advanced urban areas, don't always get the same opportunities to access to employment, whether it's social capital, cultural capital, having a laptop. We've developed a digital solution that everybody can access and hopefully introduce everybody to the corporate landscape. But rather than speak about it myself, I'd just like to start with a video, very short, it's 1.5 minutes, from some of the students that we have helped previously.
Hi, my name is Angelina Descent from Gambia, from the University of Johannesburg. I'm currently completing my LLB. I love the fact that it is quite complex and that it takes us outside of our comfort zone, you know, especially with regards to having different kinds of employers in different industries outside of what we do in school. So that was one
There she is.
My name is Tia. I'm a third-year LLB student at the University of Brazil. The GradStar app really provides a combination of all employers as opposed to spending unnecessary time going through the individual websites. It really provides nice consolidated access to all employees to their select.
Greetings, my name is Shanti and I'm one of the GradStar 2020 Top 10 of Finance, and I'm excited to announce that I'm starting my position today at BP Southern Africa as finance graduate. I actually got a notification through the GradStar app that BP was looking to hire some graduates, and that's how I made it to interviews, and the rest is history. So I'm my first day today and I'm so excited. A huge shout out to GradStar, to BP Southern Africa. Thank you so much and take care.
My name is Nitya Mabaso. I'm currently a master's candidate in political science at the University of Witwatersrand. I truly am so grateful because I did enter a few years ago, but I didn't make it. So to be here, to have this opportunity, to interact with the kind of employers and the type of people that I'm here, to be able to expand my network and expand my skills and get to know people a little bit more about who I am as a person and how I fit in, this truly has been a great pleasure.
Thank you. That's just a few words from some of the students that we have introduced to employers and hopefully changed their lives and their families' lives and their everything for a little bit. So every little bit we can do to contribute, we're grateful for. And I've got a little bit of a presentation here, as it says, empowering students to improve their life opportunities. That's what GradStar aims to do. Oh, I've got the clicker. So we democratize employment opportunities, as I mentioned. I've got the youth unemployment rate here. My figures are clearly out of date. I'm sure your figures at SAIC are more accurate than mine. But the concept here is that youth unemployment is insanely high, and what does that spell for the future of South Africa? So as GradStar, we try and develop as many partnerships as we can. We work with all the career centers of all of the universities and TVET colleges nationally. We try to reach every student in the land. We work with faculties. I mean, you can read for yourself. We have an amazing relationship with Golden Key. SAIC should be added onto this now, so thank you very much. And what we try and do is reach every student in the land to ask them to enter our program. As you see, we've also been covered on various media. So it's the largest student recognition program in the country. Last year, the awards received entries from 49 individual tertiary institutions. For 2020 was 46. We want to continue to increase that, but I hope that demonstrates a little bit about how we're really trying to reach out to everybody. People who entered the awards, the student demographics, as you see, as representative as we can be. We are looking forward to increasing our entries and our numbers this year, and we do hope that all of you in the room will enter the awards this year. We access all fields of study. The awards are open to students of all ages, students of all years, students of all disciplines, and those who have recently graduated. I know there's a few of you here also. So basically anything that an employer is looking for in a graduate program, which is a current student they can build a pipeline with, or those with less than 2 years employment experience. And what's really important is that we don't judge you on your academic qualifications. Of course, that's important, but we don't sit there and say, you're 70%, you're going to get through to the top 100. We look at the person, we look at who you are, we try and address the situations and the challenges that you've had during your lifetime and what kind of person that's made you into, and will that make you a good employee that can contribute to the economy and the future of South Africa. So the Future Fit characteristics, we do partner with an organization called Future Fit. We look at these characteristics here. As you see, and I'm sure each and every one of you can demonstrate these characteristics. From there, this is the top 100 event. So once we receive over 10,000 entries a year, 10,100 perhaps now, guys. The entries are still open. But if you reach through the assessments, if you reach the top 100, that really is an incredible experience. You heard from a couple of the top 100 candidates earlier, but we take you to Joburg. We take you for a 4-day event. We pay for everything. We introduce you to employers. We introduce you to the world of what the employment world looks like. And we try and bridge that gap and bridge that understanding between the world of university and the world of work. We also offer career guidance. We connect you with mentors. And we introduce you to some of the onboarding practices that employers use, so you know what it looks like by the time you get to be there. And these are some of the organizations that we work with. So if you want to work for any of these organizations, then let's enter the awards. So how do you enter the awards? How do you be part of the initiative? How do you take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to you? First of all, it was never going to cost you anything. So we've developed the GradStar app. The GradStar app is a digital solution, again, really trying to enhance the reach we have into the whole of South Africa and perhaps those with less resources. All you need is a smartphone. You can download the GradStar app from every app store. It's on the Huawei App Store, it's on the Apple App Store, and it's on Google Play. And it has 2 elements. And we developed this by asking you. So we went to our 2019 top 100, and we said, understanding GradStar and what we try and achieve with GradStar, what can we do to help you as a digital solution? And we gave them a prize too. And they came back with two main themes arose. Firstly, can we have our own social space? We want to create our own networks. LinkedIn's fabulous, but it's not for us. Can you give us a space, a student-only space, where we can connect and we can build our future connections to take into the workplace, where we can lean on each other? So we did that. We built a student-only space. There is a social wall there. You can post, you can like, you can comment, same as every other social platform in the world. But what's interesting, what you do need to remember, present yourself there, because the employers are looking there too. And then secondly, the second theme that arose was a comprehension of the employment landscape. The students came to us and they said, look, let's say I'm a computer science graduate. And I know we're in demand, and I know there's quite a few computer science companies looking for computer science graduates. But do I know that ShopRite is one of the best ComSci programs in the country? Probably not. And if I do, how do I apply for it? And then I might find out that there's 300 organizations who want to employ a computer science graduate. But but that means I now have to go to 300 websites and 300 application processes, and. And they're like, the time, the resources, it's all just, can you simplify that? And so that's what we've tried to achieve here. So when you download the GradStar app, we will ask you to complete your profile, we'll ask you to complete your academic details, and a little bit about yourself. As again, open to all sectors. These are the current sectors and the current representation of the sectors on the GradStar app. And these are the companies who are searching. So when you complete your profile, that's not visible to everybody, but it's in the background. And employers, all of these employers and more, sit there and they have a subscription and they log into the app and they search for you. If they have a program for engineers, or if they have their grad program is opening for computer science, they can search the data that you put in and they can match with you. They can reach out to you and say, I've matched with you, please can you send me your academic transcript? Please can you apply for my graduate program? This gives access to students from across the nation. If you're on the app, you can match with an employer. You don't have to be at the UCT Grad Fair, the Careers Fair. You don't have to be at the WITS. Yes, you're all from WITS here today. And you don't have to be at the WITS Careers Fair. You can be at the University of Zululand and you can still be on the app and you can still match with an employer. So that's what we've tried to develop, to try and really just equalize access to opportunity. And we hope that's going to make a difference. We also host webinars. If you enter the awards, if you log on to the app, then you get free access to our webinars. We host career guidance, we host mentorship, we host many things that you get free access to. It's just another way that we would like to try and help you. This is just some stats. And we're launching School Start. To enhance this even further, we are launching the same program for school leavers. So not to give graduates access to employment, but school leavers access to university. And if we can find some rural or urban talented school leavers who never thought that they had the chance of going to university, who never believed it was real, and we can give them that, and we can give them a bursary, and we can give them funding, that can change in a small way, but that can change the landscape and the employment landscape for all, forever. So that's our programs, that's what we hope to achieve. As I said, we hope to give hope to the youth of South Africa. And that's just a little bit about what I addressed. So that's my entire presentation today. I would love to see you join the GradStar program. It's, as I said, we will never charge a student anything. We would just like you to download, be part of it, take advantage of the opportunities that are offered to you. And hopefully, we can all together work together to a better future. Thank you very much, and thank you to SAIC.
Thank you so much, Ms. Barker. That was very, very informative. And as the youth say, it's a plug. Here's a plug. Ms. Barker just gave you guys a plug. So please use it, like connect, apply for those awards, you know, especially the app. I hope by now you all started to download it because, you know, like the president said, you must walk out here having done the things, you know? So now, yesterday, for those who were here yesterday, you know, we were chatting about, you know, how to, you know, localizing the economy, and we also looked at jobs of the future in the other panel discussion. But now with all that, if you can see, it's going in stages, you know. Now it's about, where is the money, right? So, yes, where is the money? So now the first panel discussion today will look at financing the economy because that's part of a very, very key factor in achieving what we want to achieve. Because as the saying goes, I don't know if you guys listen to Kwaito maybe, well, the oldies, the newies, there used to be that song, Etifagi Milo Zobona. So, yes, so indeed, I'd like to introduce to the stage our moderator, Ms. Neo Masala, she is the head of economic policy of SAIC, and she will be moderating the panel discussion.
Hello, I didn't know I was going to get up to the podium. I'd just like to welcome all of our speakers up. While they do that, I just want to give a context to what this discussion will be about. Like she said, the question that young people are asking today is, where's the money? Or where the bag at? We want the bag and we want to know where it is. So, developmental financing is one of the most important issues that's facing emerging markets like ours. We would know that we live in this market. And all of these issues that have been coming up in our previous session all lead up to the critical issue of how financing issues, public financing issues, and private ones or commercial ones, what strategies they use to fund businesses. And as we keep hearing, SMMEs are the largest employers in the country, and startups are meant to be leading all of this innovation. But the issue is the financing heading towards those businesses? And are those businesses the ones that are owned by young people, by women, by Black people? These are the issues that our panelists are going to be engaging with me on today. And we have many people to speak, so I'll just introduce them in no particular order. We have Sean Charlie, who is the head of operations at SEFA, which is the Small Enterprise Financing Agency, so he knows where the bag is. We also have Mr. Raven Naidu from CEDA. We have Dr. Alpha, who is from the President Climate Committee. We have Lwazi Pakade, who is a councillor in the city of Cape Town. And then we also have Mr. Desan Naidu, Mudli, who is from Sawia. So with that being said, I think we can start the panel, although, a seating arrangement has been made for me. I think we can start the panel. Good. Okay, so for this panel, we were actually meant to be joined by the Deputy Finance Minister, Mr. David Masondo. Unfortunately, he was unable to make it, but I think the question I was going to ask him can sort of go to SEFA, which is that currently in the news, we've heard that there's 20 billion rand that's going to be allocated to small businesses, and this is a part of the COVID loan scheme. So it's a continuation of that COVID loan scheme. But what led to the initial loan scheme not really reaching the people it was intended to was the fact that SMMEs weren't able to access this capital through traditional avenues, which are the commercial banks who were left in charge of all of this money. You guys keep saying the government stole 500 billion rand. Unfortunately, corruption is a real thing in South Africa, but so are systematic inefficiencies, such as commercial banks not approving our small businesses to be able to access these loans. So as SEFA, I'd like to know if you're involved in the allocation of these funds and how you're going to make sure that they reach the correct people.
Okay, thank you for that question. And again, wonderful event, very esteemed. And I think what the South African Youth Economic Council, you guys are doing this is really well prepared. And yeah, I think we can definitely continue our relationship in terms of how we can, bring value as a DFI to our youth. On the question, I think there was a lot of misconception in the industry during COVID with the 200 billion fund that was actually guaranteed by Treasury. So what actually happened, the initial, how they laid it out, the design was wrong. because this was actually a guarantee to banks, where the banks would basically draw down for these funds and they would share losses. So, but the design was actually a little bit flawed, because with some of the requirements on the banking side, you know, and especially with entrepreneurs during COVID, it was very difficult to provide audited financials and, you know, very crafted business plans. I mean, nobody knew at the time. I mean, we have to go back now and look at the time. There was so much uncertainty. You know, the stats were crazy that I don't know how many millions of people are going to die of COVID. So it made it difficult for even an entrepreneur at that time to take up a loan facility. So what happened was that the banks didn't really draw down from the facility, although it was a guarantee from the state. So this is sort of sovereign that was issued to the banks to say that, you know what, invest in these small businesses and then we will stand as your security. You know, but entrepreneurs also were so uncertain about what's happening. It made it very difficult for the drawdown. So I think it was actually probably a little more than, I think about 10 to 15% was drawdown. I think it was about between 15 and I think probably 25 billion that was drawn down at the time. But now when they reintroduced it for 20 billion, the whole design now has been really speaking to the market now. It's not as stringent, you know, it's where everybody was talking now to everyone. And in terms of the guarantee schemes, it's something that the banks will engage with Treasury. As CIFA, we have our own budgets that's been allocated with our performance targets, but also from CIFA, we have our, I mean, some of the older guys might remember the Cooler Guarantee Scheme. We have a similar scheme that speaks to what Treasury and the bounce back, I think the bounce back loan scheme. So that loan scheme is, the design has changed, and we really do anticipate a lot of uptakes from the general public. But the initial flow was really the design and the requirements. I mean, it was really, even for us as deal makers, it was a bit too strict, you know, at the time.
Yeah, and I think on that point that you're on, we can take maybe another question from Mr. Sean Charlie from CETA, especially in, I think, a lot of the work that CIFA and CETA do is very relevant and integrated to one another. In terms of businesses, things like being able to do financials, things like knowing what banks want from you as an SMME, these are things that CETA assists small enterprises with. However, during COVID-19, I think the stat is that you guys only met 52% of your stated objectives. In terms of making a recovery from that and making sure that you start to recover along with the economic recovery plan, what changes has CETA put into place to be able to access these businesses again that went through this tumultuous period where no one in the economy knew what was going on?
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you very much. And once again, as my colleague Sean said, thank you to the South African Youth Economic Council for having us. It's a pleasure being here and engaging and interacting with you. Yes, it's a painful stat that you just raised, the 52%. But I think we've got to look at it in the context of what actually happened that year. I think, you know, we, like many other organizations, were really caught off guard by COVID. And what it did was it brought to the fore all the inefficiencies that we've had and, you know, we've been carrying out through the years. When COVID hit, I think one of the biggest challenges for us was to pivot. And to pivot our business model, where our traditional business model was based on a branch model, on a physical model, on a face-to-face model, we really struggled in terms of the pivot into moving into digital offerings. A big part of the problem is because of the markets that we're trying to serve. Now, as CEDA, we have a very, very broad pipeline in terms of what kind of businesses we support. You know, starting from right at the beginning where it's just entrepreneurs with a potential idea, all the way to the other end of the spectrum where you've got businesses that are in their growth and maturity phase and where they're looking for things like export development. So we've got a very broad range. And the market that we really struggled with was that, you know, the sort of the beginning market, you know, people in the township, people in the rural areas. people that don't have access to things like data. We took it for granted. We take it for granted that, yes, people have data, people have the tools to actually, get onto those platforms. So whilst we did eventually, sort of pivot our model to offer more hybrid services, we still found that the market wasn't able to access those services. Making your services available online is all well and good for those that have the ability to access it. And accessibility then still remains a challenge for us. So yes, we did struggle in that financial year, but we have improved. We have made major changes in terms of our accessibility. Two things. The first thing is really looking at developing our online offerings in terms of trying to digitize as many of our offerings as possible, including things like training, mentorship, coaching, all of that being done online and for those that can access it. What do we do about the market that can't access it? Cost of data still remained a major challenge for businesses and potential entrepreneurs, access to the equipment. So on that perspective, we realized that we would still need to have this hybrid model. We would have to have that physical accessibility in conjunction with the online and digital accessibility. And SEDA has 52 branches around the country, and we also support in excess of 100 business technology incubators. The challenge, though, is it's still not sufficient enough to reach every part of the country and every part of where we want to touch. So going forward, we've also realized that we need to improve this. Budgets are always a constraint, but we need to be innovative. We need to come up with different models and different ways of reaching them. And part of what we would be doing in this financial year as well is looking at how do we increase these access points? How do we supplement it? How do we find different models and different stakeholder engagements for us to actually reach more of the clients that need our services? So, yeah.
Thank you for that. So, coming from that, the whole issue with accessing businesses, the businesses that typically need these services the most are the ones that have the hardest time reaching you guys. And I just want to put Dr. Alpha in the hot seat and ask, we heard Kana earlier asking about how, in terms of the Presidential Climate Committee, all of this money has sort of been pledged towards green energy, renewable energy, and starting up and supporting businesses in South Africa as we go towards the energy transition. My question for you would then be how, as the Climate Committee, is there any integration between you and government organizations such as SEDA on how you can access businesses that maybe are looking to get into renewables, but they're in the ideation space? A lot of startups need support. That's one of the classical sort of like structural issues with startups, is that you have people who have an idea, they need capital, they need to reach market, they need so many things in order to make that a reality. From this committee, and usually committees are like right at the top, how are you going forward with trying to make sure that, I think the money that was pledged by international investors was about 130 billion. How do we make sure the 130 billion reaches people who have ideas, who are passionate about green energy, the people who are affected by the climate crisis the most? How do we make sure this money reaches them, their businesses, and their ideas?
Yeah. Thank you. Morning, everyone, and thank you for the question. It's an absolute pleasure to be with all of you this morning. I love the work that SAIEC does, and I just want to make one thing absolutely clear. We're talking about how we transition this economy to a net zero economy by around mid-century. And by mid-century, old fossils like me are going to be long dead. This economy is going to be run by the people in this room. And what we do has to actively position you to play that role. If we're simply replicating the economic structure of today into the future, we're going nowhere. So we're trying to craft a climate transition that works for everyone, and in particular for people that are young, entrepreneurial, have got a bit of flair, have got an eye on the future. And SAIEC, ticks all of those boxes. To the money. So you asked the question earlier, where's the money? And I know there's been a lot of excitement about this $8.5 billion deal that donors offered us at COP26 last year. And yes, there is a negotiation around that deal. It's a little bit of a brinkmanship negotiation. So, the donors have their own agenda. We're not going to dance to anyone's tune. That I can give you an absolute bottom line assurance on. And the negotiation's getting into a tough phase, so you may hear different reports. I'm pretty sure it'll be a done deal. The money is going to go into three broad areas. The one is into our energy system, and the absolute priority on our electricity grid is upgrading the grid. We've got a grid configured for coal, and we need to reconfigure the grid for where the low carbon renewable opportunities lie. Then we want to put money into the transition to electric vehicles. By about 2040, we're going to stop making the internal combustion engine. It's going to fundamentally reconfigure the motor industry and all the supply chains, the charging stations, the mechanics, etc. And the third big area we want to fund with that money is the hydrogen economy. And the real long-term play, for those of you with an entrepreneurial flair, I want to encourage you to pursue the hydrogen economy. It's big news. So on all of these mechanisms, the big thing is how to get you into the game. And from where we sit, the big constraint is around pipeline. What we don't have in this country is bankable projects developed to the right level that can then match entrepreneurs like you with funders who have the money. So we're investing heavily in pipeline development. I've just raised some funding from the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet. We're going to be setting up a project preparation facility. I'd like an ongoing conversation with SAIEC about how we design and get that moving. And I do want to, 8.5 billion sounds like a lot of money. I just want to tell you, it's peanuts in the bigger scheme of things. The energy transition in this country is going to cost us about 1 trillion rand just to get to 2030, and 3 to 4 trillion up to 2050. And the real, if you want your eye on the game, it's to play in the broader energy space and to get your, tap into that broader flow of money. And the bulk of it is going to have to come from inside South Africa. So, the game is not really sitting there begging donors to give us, some small peanuts, small change. The game is, how do we mobilize the South African capital markets to fund this energy transition? And I want you to be part of that game, of that conversation. Sorry, it's a long reply. You must.
I think it's sufficient. We want content. We came here for those type of explanations. We want the answers. So it's really appreciated. Councillor Lwazi Phakade, so I think you're the youngest person on the panel. You're also our political representative, people from the city of Cape Town. Are you guys from his ward? Are you clapping because you're from the ward? Maybe he's doing good work there. So local government goes largely ignored when we talk about developmentalism, and it's a very big problem. It's a mistake, because a lot of the things that affect normal, everyday working people as well as business owners happen at local level. Things like spatial planning, things like lack of infrastructure. Now, the city of Cape Town prides itself, I was going through some of the reports, and it prides itself on creating an environment that's conducive to business, right? So I know you're on the opposition side, but I think it would be great if you explained on local level what things you think could be done in terms of addressing spatial planning, in terms of addressing infrastructure issues, giving young people access to the places where business happens, where commerce and industry have all of this money accumulating in certain parts of the city. How do you give young people access to that, and what can be done from policy level, national government, provincial government, to give local government capacity in order to serve young people?
Am I audible?
Yeah, I think just talk.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Am I? Okay.
Not really.
Okay, I don't think so. It's on though, but yeah, let's use the mic. Amandla! Amandla! Thank you so much for this opportunity, our moderator. And also thank you so much for inviting me to come speak here. I think protocol has been observed by the president when he came to address us this morning. And I must say that as well, sijongile le nto ye-Wits capture, because it seems that Wits is here trying to capture everything. So we're going to come and disrupt the space. My name is Lwazi Phakade. I'm one of the councillors in the city of Cape Town, youngest ward councillor in the city of Cape Town as well. And I like when the moderator specifies that I am in the opposition. Therefore, my role is clear, is to always critique the leading government at that particular point in time to ensure that our people get their services. Look, I think one thing that you must consider, and I think the moderator also considers, is that local government really does get ignored. I make this example all the time, and I say when I was in the SRC of Stellenbosch University, our budget in 2015 was 1 million rands. And now this is a budget that is meant to serve over 30,000 students. And I come into local government in November 2021, and I realize that the ward allocation budget is still 1 million rands. And you ask yourself, how are you supposed to deliver services to thousands and thousands of masses of our poor people in the townships with just 1 million rand? So you take that 1 million rand, you build 4 pavements, and you've already done with about half of that 1 million rands. What are you left to do? You take 20,000 rands, you make dinner for elderly people, because you have to please all of these different sectors of the society, of the community as well. And now it's a problem. It shows that there's lack of understanding of the role that local government is supposed to be playing. Because local government is supposed to be playing a role of directly delivering services to the people. Because local government also is the first point of call that people have with government in general. Before you get to province, before people even talk about who is the president of the country, they know who their ward councillor in the township. And that's their first point of call and their first point of interaction with government, which is supposed to be one of the spheres that are directly funded to ensure that services are easily distributed to our people. Secondly, on the question of businesses, and spatial planning in the township, look, we also have another big problem, and that's what I've realized in the city of Cape Town, is that we've got so many pieces of land in the townships which we live in. But if you come and you have a business idea, they're going to tell you that, no, you cannot use this land. This land is city-owned. Therefore, you have to go to a stringent, strict process to apply for that land. And what you realize that most of these pieces of land that exist have become dumping sites. And there's young people that come into my office and that say to me, look, leadership, I've got this idea that I want us to, pursue of cleaning this space and turning it into something else. And what you realize is that even if you get to approve such decisions, 2 days later or a week later, some people are going to come and they say, no, this land belongs to us, or this land we had planned to build a church in it, or all of those kinds of things. Or city comes and says, no, this land, you have to apply for it, and it takes this amount of documentations to have for you to apply for that land. So it's another big problem, because now you've got these ideas that are just floating around, never get to be seen into implementation, because there's this politics around land ownership, Another thing that I wanted to say with regards to that, it's always great to have these kinds of conversations in these kinds of setups that we are in, for example, right now. But I want to, engage the leadership of the executive of SAIEC as well, to maybe consider as well taking some of these conversations into our townships, And I'm taking this opportunity as well to invite you, maybe while you are here, to just come and see how we live. The businesses that young people are doing, the initiatives that young people are taking, to try, take themselves out of the situations that they are in, because there is this rumor, that young people are apathetic. Young people do not want to do anything, but it's a lie, and we must always make sure that we mention that it is a lie that young people do not want to do anything and they're expecting everything from the government. Because the problem is that we are never given the opportunities, It took so many years, after democracy for Langa to have its youngest ward councillor, And that also would not have happened if us as young people did not take matters into our own hands, And I always say to other young people as well that we realize that we're not going to be given these opportunities. Now what do? We go and we grab themselves. So we challenge. So we challenge leadership. We challenge spaces all the time and wherever we go. We challenge spaces in the city council. We challenge spaces in the business sector. We challenge spaces in the private sector as well, to ensure that we get these opportunities. Yeah.
I think the invitation is a resounding yes from our executive, and really the message about the youth having to go out there and grab the opportunities, grab the power, grab the machinery, as people from WIT like to say. It's a very important message, and it's one we endorse. So next, I'd just like to ask Mr. Deson Moodley, who yesterday I think took a lot of the brunt for the renewable sector. He was really a champ about it and gave an amazing presentation from SOWIA, which is the SA Wind and Energy Association. And we asked him yesterday a lot about financing. I think it would be really important for the audience today to just get an indication of, since Dr. Alpha has spoken about how we can't expect foreign direct investment and these international donors to be the only people that contribute towards moving to the energy plan that we're moving towards. What role do commercial banks and direct funding institutions currently play in your sector in funding entrepreneurs? I think the figure you gave us yesterday was that 33% of the investment into wind energy currently goes to black-owned businesses, and we were asking, well, why? Why is that the status quo? What role are the banks and the commercial enterprises playing? And do you have any idea on how we can change it, the level of investment and who the investment goes to?
Thanks for that question, and thank you for having me back today, and it's a great pleasure to be on this panel. I think, firstly, last night, I actually had my thoughts were still reeling after yesterday's discussion, because I think this group presented me with a lot of tough questions, which, I said I couldn't answer. But getting back to commercial banks and the 33%, you know, I was reflecting on if we take it one level higher than that, if you look at most big businesses in South Africa and you look at black ownership, is it materially above 33%? So, you know, rather than single out the wind industry, before I joined the business that I'm with now 3 years ago and joined the board of the Wind Energy Association, I'd spent 30 years in financial services in different roles. And I think I would like to turn around the question to say, where do I think this group of people, young people, should be directing their energy, their enthusiasm, where they should be putting pressure? And how many of you in this room have a unit trust investment, a retirement fund, an endowment policy? Can I get a show of hands? Well, the question I want to ask you is, you know, we're at a very interesting time in capital markets. And I think taking away from what Dr. Olver said, the amount of money that's going to be required for the climate transition is much bigger than the $8.5 billion. The $8.5 billion South Africa is going to have to slog to get it on its own terms, because there's going to be massive pressure from the international community to get what they want. But very interestingly, I think retirement fund trustees, those have changed in the last 30 years since I started working in 1992. Those trustees are now younger people. Their demographic is different. They're younger, I should say. They're also asking their investment managers and the consultants that advise them. They're saying, what are you doing to not invest for returns at any cost, but invest with returns which have social impact, returns which create jobs, returns which are supporting entrepreneurs? And I'm saying that you should use your voice on social media and when you write to them to say, I want you to do more of this. Because we're at an interesting point where the retirement fund trustees are asking for more of the investment. The individuals whose money it is are asking for it. I think the gap is the people who are charged with managing the money are doing what comes easiest. They're investing in companies like Facebook, like Tesla, which don't need this capital. They will get it from other parts of the world. So I'm saying use your powerful voice as young activists and demand that more money should be invested through pension funds, through the capital markets, into where it's going to make the most impact.
Yeah, I think it's really unfortunate that the Deputy Finance Minister couldn't join us, because while we're on the private sector investment, the PIC is also another issue that should be addressed, but I won't burden any of you guys with having to answer that. I just think it is important for young people to be thinking about the source of the money. Things like our pension funds, our investment, for the trust fund babies in the room. Where's your money going? You know, it's really important. And it's one thing to put political pressure and demand things. It's another to say, well, we contribute to this economy. I think that's a critical thing to always remember. We're not just recipients of things. We are contributors to the economy as taxpayers, as people working in a society, as people who go to universities, people who have pension funds. Some people have already started working. Your money goes somewhere before you retire at the age of 65, and it can go towards making the better economy that you're envisioning. So I think that's a very important point. On that note of I think, government, private sector, the cooperation, a burning question that we have for you, Dr. Alpha, is there seems to be some mixed messaging coming from the Department of Energy and Mineral Resources and then this climate committee. And we know if you're an econ or finance student, it's bad for business. Mixed messaging is bad for business. Investors talk about uncertainty. South Africa's an uncertain climate. As you've said, the economy of the future is not going to look like the one that we have today. How do we make sure that government, the coordination between stakeholders, even just in the state, align so that investment is attractive? So the people who are investing in Facebook can look at South Africa and say, we know where this country is going, we know what their government are doing, we know where businesses are going to be in the next 10 or 20 years, we can invest in them. What work are you doing from your end? I think we can ask Minister Gwede Mantashe his questions later. From the climate committee, what work are you doing to make sure that the message from the government is a strong and concise one?
You're keeping us on our toes, Chair. It's good. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Yeah, no, great. So, look, you know, politicians always like to criticize the media, but I do want to say you mustn't listen to everything that the media says. Minister Mantashe is an active member. He's a member of the Climate Commission, so he's one of our most active members. He comes to every meeting. He engages in debate. And we are not as far apart as you would imagine listening to the papers. So, you know, and you can ask him this later. You know, he will acknowledge there is a transition underway. As part of that transition, we have to decarbonize our energy system and massively scale up the amount that we're spending on renewables. We may disagree a little bit about the pace at which we scale up renewables and take down coal, but that's more a detail issue. We would strongly support him on the two other issues he raises, which is that you've got to have energy security. So we can't just shut down our energy system by taking coal off without something to replace it. And there's got to be energy access. So we want an energy system that's affordable for people. We can't have prices that go sky high like they're currently doing in Europe. So we need to think about these broader development questions as we approach the climate transition. And for instance, you know, Minister Mantashe says, I can't put more renewables on unless I can balance the grid. I agree with him. How do you balance a grid in today's day and age? We don't yet have battery technology at the scale that you can do it. The only way you can balance it is with gas. So we would support him in saying, certainly for the transition, you need a large amount of gas to balance all this renewable energy that you're bringing onto the grid. Even while you invest in battery technology, long-term hydrogen as an energy carrier, etc. So, you know, there's some nuances where we may disagree with. But big picture, I would argue we're on the same page. But ask him later whether he agrees with that statement.
Oh, we most definitely will. So on the issue of finance, I think a good question to ask you, Sean, would be maybe, I keep getting confused between the CEDA and the CEPA. There's a lot, there's CETA, CEDA, CEPA, there's just a lot going on. But the question I want to ask is, from your end, I think the amount of money that state institutions that especially focus on financing small businesses is really inadequate, because when we think of the South African economy, a lot of focus goes towards these large companies and then businesses that are already quite large, but the people that we want employed in the economy are employed by small businesses, micro enterprises, small ones, medium ones. And a big issue that comes up again is the issue of investment. What type of relationship do you have as a government institution in your sector with investment institutions that focus on smaller businesses, especially because yesterday we were talking about how we want South Africa to have a Silicon Valley. And Silicon Valley, as much as we now see it as this very private thing, was something that was started out of government. Our taxpayer money, or the Americans' taxpayer money, was used to establish Silicon Valley. What relations do you have with investors where you can try and have these incubators that we've been talking about become something that's really strong in our economy? And what steps have been taken by CETA to get to that point where we do have a Silicon Valley and it's not just tucked away somewhere in Stellenbosch, all inaccessible?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Monica. Good question. I think from CEFA, also CEFA is the younger brother, if I can call it that, of the IDC. If you guys know the IDC, it's the Industrial Development Corp. So we were actually established about 10 years ago to really to fill that void, you know, because there's a lot of small businesses. And now, I mean, the president also highlighted the importance of SMME businesses. So, and it is also, if you take it a little bit further, how important now is youth businesses, you know, women-owned businesses, because we're actually at a point now where really jobs needs to be created, you know, and it's not like we can't be picking and choosing now. We need to create jobs. If you create jobs, you actually grow the economy, because it brings a less pressure on our welfare system, and it brings income into the fiscus. You know, so we need to invest in small businesses, but also with our stakeholders. I mean, it's PIC, IDC. Normally through our IDC relationship, we reach all of these investors, and we have designed certain programs that are specifically targeted for these markets. Raven touched on it, how we are looking at, you know, entrepreneurs that are in rural communities, townships, Cape Flats. So there are programs that are being designed. And I mean, these programs are designed for specific communities so that they can be self-sustainable. So some of the programs, we have a TREP program, Township and Rural Entrepreneurship Program, where we have programs that fund from spaza shops up until manufacturing businesses. So what we have designed is a program where these entrepreneurs in this community, whether you're a bakery, a spaza shop, a barber shop, a butchery, whether you are Chisanyama, all of these businesses will have access to funding, and they will allow themselves to trade amongst each other, and it will actually grow their economy, which will also contribute to their infrastructure development in that specific communities. So this is one of the programs that's really exciting. It's actually groundbreaking for us, because the informal sector is actually where the jobs are being created, and we need to formalize those businesses. So by formalizing those businesses, really, you're getting into creating jobs, you know, you're hitting hard numbers there. But also, we can't leave the youth behind. I mean, we have a lot of, South Africa has produced one of the greatest young entrepreneurs, you know, and we have created the Youth Fund, Youth Challenge Fund, where we are focusing now on technology-driven businesses. I mean, these are businesses that the youth will understand it better, but it's not something where you have to create criteria where it's too complicated to achieve. It needs to be something that we can, you know what, let's see how this thing comes about, you know. We trust the youth, and let's see if this thing can be commercialized. And then we can invest in those businesses. And sometimes, you know, entrepreneurship, I believe it's the hardest job out there, but also the most rewarding. But if you allow young entrepreneurs to have the opportunity, you know, they can create new economies. Because a lot of economies are, I mean, when we have our straight sessions, we can see that the job market is getting smaller. You know, we need to create job creators, not job seekers, you know. So we need to create entrepreneurs that can fill those holes in the economy so that the economy can grow. But with our stakeholders, I think the funds have been allocated. I think last year we did, in youth hands, we put about $500 million, 550 million. This was towards youth entrepreneurs, and these are in very, you know, entrepreneurs that were excluded from the main economy. There are now, I mean, the ones that we did recently was in the Western Cape, and there was other impressive ones in KZN and Gauteng. But the two that we did was furniture manufacturers. And these entrepreneurs, I mean, they really take raw material that you can't believe, you know, and what they convert that raw material into furniture that are being sold at, you know, at one of the blue chip retailers, you know, and it shows you the innovation that's out there. And these are just two that I'm talking about. There's many that have been assisted, but there's still more that we can do. But so we know that the opportunities are there. We know that the skill sets are there. It's just really about linking them. And this is also the reason why we have now in the MTIF, you know, the medium-term framework budget that we have, we have now allocated 10 billion or more than 10 billion so that we can support these entrepreneurs from these disadvantaged communities. Because if we can get it right, getting those informal businesses really formalized, it will really assist, and it will also open up new innovation and new sectors to grow into.
I mean, on the issue of the informal economy, I think this is where CEDA comes in. And I think my bone to pick with CEDA, especially in terms of budgetary issues, is you get money. And sometimes that money isn't used, where sometimes you're not exhausting the budget completely, but then when we go to our small towns and our townships, these places where we live, a lot of us don't know about CEDA. A lot of us know about it, but it's in town where I have to get into a taxi and go there. Or sometimes for people who really live in the more remote rural areas, they have to go to a completely different town. Usually your offices are in CBDs. The numbers are also quite low. What can we expect to see after this amazing conversation from CEDA, especially with the money that we want to go into institutions like CEDA, in terms of expanding in order to reach young people? And maybe what are the current limitations that are preventing you from having an office in Langa, from having an office in smaller towns where maybe there's an agro-processing, a person who wants to go into agro-processing, but they live in a very rural area and they can't really access one of your branches to even come, and see a business advisor to see if their idea is viable. What are you doing from your end about that?
Fantastic, thank you. Let me start off by saying I know this session is around financing the economy and following the money, but one thing that we forget about is following the support, and that's where agencies like CEDA exist. In terms of the focus area, and we touched on the township and rural entrepreneurial program, and in the last two and a half years, the focus of CEDA via the Department of Small Business Development has shifted towards these township and rural economies for a number of reasons. They've been previously marginalized, a lot of them are informal, but yet these are thriving economies. And these are economies that, if given the right support and assistance, can actually contribute towards job creation. In terms of CEDAs, I touched on it a little bit earlier in terms of the branches that we do have. But again, yes, what are some of the limitations? The limitations are establishing branches in every part of the country. It comes with a massive infrastructure and continued operation cost. That doesn't solve our problem, and we need to be innovative. And one of the things that we have done in the past is we look at co-locations. So whilst it's not feasible to establish a full-on branch in a particular region, we partner with stakeholders and actually send our business advisors out there and to try and service the market. And what we're also doing then in this current financial year, which is underway, is we're looking then at establishing more access points, and again, using other stakeholders. So we're going to be looking at private sector stakeholders, we're going to be looking at other partners in government, and looking at creating these access points so that we can ensure that there's a dissemination of our services across. The one other thing that I want to mention, and touching on what we spoke about in terms of, you asked, how does government work together? What's happening on local, provincial, and national government level? And I'm sure everyone in this room, including yourself, will understand how fragmented the small business development landscape has been in our country. And one of the things when CEDA was established all those years ago, one of the roles of CEDA was to be what we call an ecosystem facilitator. And that somehow got lost in all the work that CEDA was doing. But what we've realized then is something needs to be done about this fragmentation. If you look at it, you've got some programs being done nationally, some being done locally. There's the cities, there's the province, there's all these departments, but there's no linkage between them. And what CEDA has been working on, in line with the district development model, is what is termed the district ecosystem facilitation model. And the plan for that is for CEDA to be the lead facilitator, but to draw in all these areas of small business support. So going into the ecosystem, figuring out who's doing what, who's providing small development services, whether at a local level, whether at a provincial level, nationally, and including what we do, and bringing this all together. So that's something that's underway, and there's a lot of work that's being done towards that. And then just touching in terms of, yes, you were absolutely right, in terms of knowing about these services, and I think that's the biggest starting point. One of the functions of SEDA is to promote entrepreneurship, but we also need to enable access to information. And for a lot of businesses, sometimes that's the vital thing, where do they get this information? And that's something we're focusing a lot on as well. For those of you that would have noticed, our small department, or the Department of Small Business Development, the Minister has been undertaking national roadshows recently, and we just had one last week in Khayelitsha. And part of it was, going out where we are implementing these township and rural entrepreneurial programs, but also promoting the access to information, and also listening to the challenges that are actually being experienced on ground level in the township, and not necessarily having programs designed elsewhere and expecting them to work in those areas. So definitely a lot of work being done in terms of increasing that accessibility, but also the realization that we as SEDA need to start playing a bigger role in linking that ecosystem and ensuring that we're talking to each other, number one, that we're not duplicating support, and that we're also trying to reach as many businesses as we possibly can.
Yeah, I think those are some really great points, especially about how currently the system is fragmented, and a lot of the issues that institutions have to deal with in terms of branches are a result of a larger problem, which is the fragmentation between national government, provincial government, and then local government, and then you have these agencies which sort of have to navigate their way through that system. I think on that point, Councillor, LED, local economic development departments, a lot of young people don't even know they exist. I didn't know it was a thing, where your municipalities have departments that are specifically, they exist to deal with the issue of local economic development. In terms of providing context for in Cape Town, what's going on? Is the LED economic department working efficiently? I know you're likely not going to agree that it is because you're speaking from the opposition benches, but I think the key thing is, as a councillor, you're one of the people that come into contact, like you've explained, with the people who have the ideas and they're young and they have all of these complaints. How do you think the existing LED departments or that structure can work to benefit those people, if it can work at all? And if you don't think it can work, what do you think needs to be there? Because we do need something at local government level where people can be in contact with their municipalities, business owners, young people in the informal sector who want to formalize their businesses and need space, retail space, access to market, entering these value chains. What can happen from the local economic development departments that municipalities have that will support the business owners you were talking about?
Is my mic still off? Okay. Thank you so much. Look, let me just, share a thought and a comment that I have when it comes to the local economy and the township economy. So we currently, what I'm observing that is happening now, we are spending a lot of time talking about formalizing the informal sector in the township, right? And it's a big problem because what is currently happening is that we do acknowledge that these businesses that exist in the township are informal businesses that are running efficiently in the way that they are running in the context of the township. And then we want to formalize them. But in formalizing them, it is detrimental to them at the same time, right? And I will explain why I'm saying this. Because there is a question of compliance that these businesses get to struggle with. And we did raise this with the minister when we invited the Minister of Small Businesses in Langa earlier this year, that in the process of formalizing these businesses that exist within the township, there is a question of compliance that they always struggle with. When they go to the bank, they are told that they need these certain documentations. They need tax certificate, or they need, you know,
Safety.
yeah, safety, compliance, and all of these kinds of things. And these things are barriers to entry into the formal business sector for businesses in the township. And it begs us to ask a question to ourselves as to how do we directly assist the existing businesses within the township without all of these impeding challenges that can face this that face these businesses in the process of formalizing them. That was just a thought. So secondly as well, the LEDs, you know, and the economic development in the city of Cape Town and the townships, you don't get these things in the townships, you know, and some of these services you don't get them. You have to, as the councillor, make sure that you fight for them to come to the township. But at the same time, we don't get young people's businesses supported directly from the city of Cape Town. It happens once in a while, and what you will always see as well is that it will happen during this time when it is towards the end of the financial year of the city. Then now everyone is trying to disperse funds unnecessarily here and there, you know, pretending as if they are assisting these businesses. But we need structured ways. We need structured ways that are streamlined and directed in assisting businesses within our townships. And at the same time, I think as young people as well, and as from my position as well as a councillor, you know, there's a proposal that I still need to put on the table of having a business council of young people within Langa. You know, that business council then becomes the source of information and the driver of resources for businesses within the township and that are existing there, you know. And now, because when you have such a structure that is empowered by the council and that is empowered by the city, we can call CEDA, we can call CIFA, you know, into a full weekend or a Saturday to say, we've got these businesses that are struggling with A, B, C, and D, can you please assist them, you know? Or we've got a conversation with the South African Youth Economic Council, we're inviting them down to Langa, but you arrive there, not to the office of the ward councillor now, but to the office or to a structure that is the Langa Business Council or the Langa Youth Business Council. Because young people must create these things, you know, and drive these things to ensure that they get the assistance that they want. There's no way that within the limited budget that a councillor has, I'll be able to ensure that all of these things come down, you know. But what we need to always be able to do as young people is to think beyond the budget that is put in front of our hands and think of innovative ways whereby we can use skills of other young people to be, you know, to be brought into the table to improve the lives of our people. Lastly as well, you know, there is CETA as well, you know, which deals with internships and all of those things. And I think President as well, Unyateli Legulendo of underpaid interns as well, you know. And I think it's also another thing that we need to address. Look, in our communities, there are, you know, institutions that exist. There are institutions of City of Cape Town, right, whereby people pay their rates where the offices of the councillors are. I think it would also be interesting if we could have institutions such as CETA to take in young people and put them in those different offices and give them stipends and stipends over a period of a year. Because what we are doing there is that you are planting a seed and you are giving this young person 1 year or 2 years of experience before they get to the workplace, you know. You give them a stipend. I don't know how much stipends go for now, but I remember when I was in Parliament, you know, as an intern there, our stipend was ranging from 4,000 rands, you know. It might seem, you know, a lot of people are saying, you know, this is so little money and all of those things. But I think beyond the money that young people get in these internships, it's always the lessons one can take out from that internship. You know, it's always the lessons that you can take out. I always share this experience as well, that when I was working as an intern in Parliament, I had a very terrible experience. You know, I had a terrible boss, you know, a political head. You know, I can't mention for obvious reasons. Maybe I might need them at some particular point in time. So I had a very terrible experience when I started, and I was an intern. You know, sometimes interns are abused. You know, they send you, they say, go photocopy. You know, that time you have an entire degree that you've worked so hard for. They say, go buy letters at Woolworths, go do this, make me tea, and all of those things. But to me, it was the experience, you know, that I got from there, of learning that it's not easy in the workplace. But sometimes you need to know that what is it that you want out of the experience that you are in. Because I was clear about what I wanted. And I knew that this person is not going to break me, you know, by sending me around. I'm just going to persevere here because this is a mere stepping stone for me. Because I know where I'm going, and I'm going to use this opportunity to do exactly what I want to do. You know, so I just wanted to share that as well to young people that are here, or to other leaders that are here who are dealing with young people, that let us take the opportunities. There's nothing that I push more than ensuring that young people know that they have to take the opportunities and grab the opportunities with both hands.
Yeah, definitely. Great message. I think I've been warned about time, so we can head into the Q&A session. But I think I'd like to give you, Mr. Moodley, and then Dr. Alpha some closing remarks, specifically on the issue of, in these new technologies, if you're talking about getting rid of these old engines and having, you know, electrified cars on our roads in South Africa, having an Elon Musk that actually claims being South African, hopefully, what competitive advantage do the two of you, I think you can answer the same question, do you think South Africa has and can really hone in on and develop in terms of skills, the environment? What do we have that we can hone in on in these new technologies, whether relating to the renewable sector or not, that we really need to zone in on and capitalize if we want to be a dominant player in these new emerging technologies? I think you can start.
Well, let me speak about what I think South Africa has first. You know, as a country, it's remarkably endowed with amazing solar and wind resources, you know, which play into the climate transition. But I think in terms of the new technologies, EVs, etc., South Africa is very well positioned to be a strong trade partner for the global south. And I mean Africa, as it becomes, you know, it's the fastest growing continent in terms of economic growth. I think even now, a lot of the highest growth countries are still in Africa. South Africa is very well positioned to be a manufacturing hub for renewable energy, for new technologies, and we've got some of the resources that are going to be part of that value chain. But I think what we've got to be careful about as a country, like I was saying yesterday, is to have a South African-only discussion, which is saying, if anybody wants to do business in South Africa, these are the rules. We should be saying, we want to do business with the world. How do we integrate into a global supply chain where we are selling whatever we make in electrical vehicles into the whole market, not just South African consumers? So I think, let me stop there in the interest of time and hand over to Dr. Alva.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've touched on our primary asset. We've got the best renewable energy resources in the world. They stand head and shoulders above anything that Europe or North America has at their disposal. We've also got incredibly deep capital markets. We're, you know, as you know, we're the financial powerhouse of sub-Saharan Africa. So we've got the capital, and we've got a really well-developed set of pension funds and insurance industries and complex financial instruments that you can apply to this transition. And then we also have world-beating engineering and mining and project management skills. And that positions us incredibly well for the future energy economy. The last ingredient that we have is a can-do, let's make it happen kind of attitude, which is exemplified by the people in this room. So, you put those together, and there's nothing stopping us being at the forefront of the energy transition instead of followers in the energy transition. So I think sitting in this room, there's not just one Elon Musk, there's a whole raft of Elon Musks, or I don't want to just advance male role models. In fact, I think the next Elon Musk is going to be a young, dynamic black woman. So let's do it, and where we sit in the presidency, we want to work with you to do it.
I think that's a really amazing note to end the session on. Thank you so much to our panelists for giving us your insights, for taking the hot questions that we had for you. I think there are more hot questions probably in the audience. Do I have time for the Q&A session? Could we please start with that? Okay, so I think I'll just start at the front, and then the mic can be passed around.
Thank you very much for presentations to the panel. I just have a few questions for Doc and Mr. Moody. Yeah, both of you here. I have a few questions for you, and I'm glad that you clarified the issue happening with the media and how they seem to portray a different agenda, which we don't like, and it's polarizing the just transition debate, because there seems to be an agenda that seeks to portray minister going this direction and the presidency going the other direction. And I'm glad that you have clarified that. My first question, of course, is to what are the steps that the commission is trying to make sure that they are working very closely with the minister, because the minister is aligned, and as you agree, even the IRP is well aligned in terms of how do we want to decommission coal and how do we want to integrate renewable into our grid. But there are fundamental questions which I want you to answer now within the just energy transition. And you spoke specifically on the energy systems, which I want you to clarify. If we talk about industrializing South African economy, if we talk about using hydrogen economy as one of the models that South Africa can use to be an industrialized economy using the hydrogen economy, I have a few questions. How are we going to industrialize with unstable and unreliable energy systems? What kind of base load are we looking at? Because if you look at the developing world, let's take India and China, let's go to the East. In fact, even if you take the West, how they have industrialized, they have used certain type of energy systems which were able to industrialize. If you check how your PMs were manufactured and the kind of energy systems that were used, if you check the East, which is currently the developing nations, they use of course, the dirty, fuels, but because of the global agreement to decarbonize, we had to, of course, check which fossil fuels emit lesser. That's the question of gas that Doc was talking about. That gas is emitting 50% less than coal. And we agree that coal is something that we should phase out, of course, in a phased approach. but how realistical, because there seems to be an approach by South Africa to use a model that we've never seen before of phasing a working energy system and coming with this hypothetical energy system that is going to solve our economic problem. While we have an unstable energy system now that is not working, and if you are proposing a project that have never worked before, how is it going to work while we have issues currently of energy system that is not working, businesses are suffering. Now, how do we push for technologies that have never tested, technologies that are not 100% in an economy that is fragile as South Africa? Now, if you can answer us, and which model are we using? Let's not use a model that is going to cause problems for our economy. Because if you talk industrialization, you need a strong, reliable electricity. So I want that clarity though. Considering the current global economic energy challenges that we see energy prices skyrocketing, and we see that countries, of course, after the Ukraine, Russia impasse, started to come up with discussion of energy independence and reducing over-reliance from other countries. Now, there seems to be a push by some in South Africa to say, don't invest on developing your own indigenous resources, right? And what is your view on that? If you are saying, let's not explore our gas in the shores, and you have huge youth unemployment that we are sitting at here, but you are saying, let's not go for our gas in our sea. Yet, Germany is saying, no, we want to go and drill the North Sea and see if we can find gas for our own people, because we don't want to rely to Russia anymore. But South Africa is saying, no, don't develop your own resources, and yet you are seeing with a serious economic crisis. What is your view on that? So I'm saying these things we need to be realistic about the world and how it works, and we need to create an energy system that will sustain external shocks in the future. Let's not create a system that will be unable to sustain external shocks. So those are the things.
Should I reply, Chair?
Yes, I think we will do it in that format.
Yeah. Okay.
Just so everyone remembers, the questions can get quite lengthy.
I'll keep it brief. So, on the question of baseload and the issue of renewables, I mean, first of all, renewables is not an unproven technology. It's a well-established technology, and there's been a global shift away from this concept of base load to instead the concept of grid balancing. And grid balancing you do first of all by diversifying your renewable resources. So you want solar farms all over the country. You want wind farms wherever there's a wind resource. So even if the sun's not shining in one part of the country, it's shining in another. So you do grid balancing in that way, and then you've got to have backup peaking power that steps in those instances where the renewables are not balancing themselves completely. And that's where, I was unequivocal, I thought. For the time being, we need gas. There's no ways at the moment we can do the kind of grid balancing that we need on pumped. I mean, we've got some pump storage, but we've already used up all of our pump storage resource. So the only way to balance the grid is with a big slug of gas. And the only caution I would sound on gas, you need gas now, and we're going to need it for about 20 years. But as we head to 2050, the gas market itself is going to fall off. The coal market's going to fall. In the 2030s, you're going to see the coal market fall off. In the 2050s, you're going to see the gas market fall off. So your big problem with gas is how to finance it. And if you're exploiting a well now, it's going to take you 10 years to get that well to market, and then you want to finance it over 20 years, that's already taking you into 2053. It's not a great idea. What I quite like, I mean, the media again has, lambasted this Car Powerships proposal. I have to say, I think the Car Powerships proposal was a very clever one, because what they're planning to do is to bring these power ships in, run them for 20 years, and then get rid of them. They go back to the country they came from. And it's driven with liquefied natural gas, and there's a global market for that. So, in fact, Minister Matash has been pushing hard this Car Powership solution. I'm hoping it comes through because I think it is a serious long-term answer to our energy issues. I do want to say, I think there is still, I'm not throwing completely out of the window this issue of base load, and there is a really low carbon, long-term technology for base load that we have at our disposal, and that's nuclear. And I would support, the big issue with nuclear is its expense, and I would support a bit of nuclear in the energy mix. I mentioned earlier this issue of energy security. Energy security, the principle that underpins it is a diversity of technologies. So you're wanting to use everything at your disposal so that if there's a catastrophic failure in one technology, you've got others in play. So a bit of nuclear in the mix, I think, is a good idea, even if it's a more expensive technology. So, as you can hear, I'm not a bunny-hugging greenie. I'm a practical planner for the climate transition, and it must be done at a pace that we can afford as a country, and we must tap all of the technologies that we have at our disposal. So, we're going to use all of our assets, and we're going to run them as hard as we can. But that does not mean that I support business as usual. You must embrace the future, we must march boldly into it, and we must build our own energy systems that we control as South Africans. Not dancing to, believe me, this is not about dancing to Europe's tune. It's about setting the agenda ourselves and being leaders in the space, because it's in our own commercial interests to do that.
Thank you so much. So my name is Tebogo Mahusela, and I'm from the UCT SRC. Some of my questions are directed towards the man on the right. And that would be, we've talked a bit about the problem of funding being allocated and being backed by the government, and how that model was inefficient and only distributed about 15%. But I don't think we've really now, we've dissected the problem, but what would be the solution? So going forward, I think some of the things which I would critique would be that the government tries to be a hero or a savior when there's a crisis, but now there's an opportunity where now the economy is now beginning to rise since the pandemic. We're moving past that. How do we create a multiplier effect that will support those businesses to grow from just SMMEs and startups to really be the corporations? So that would be the question. What would be a solution to those problems? And then secondly, the councillor also mentioned how we're having problems of bureaucracy when you are trying to start up something. You get the paperwork done, and even processes seem to fail us. So is that an invitation for us as youth to now push and go ahead and take those things even without having done processes? Because we are trying the paperwork, it's wasting our time, And the process of trying to formalize the businesses and ideas that we have, or trying to formalize those ideas we have, is failing. So essentially, is that an invitation for youth to now say, we're going to take up that space, no matter what you guys say, criminalize us, do whatever you want? So how do we now tackle that issue? And then thirdly, my thing would be around, there was something said around how we need to push activism for the sake of having green investments. And as you know right now, the reason you'd have an EFT or retirement annuity is because there's tax benefits to doing that. So it would be very difficult for me as an accounting student to now go and say, I'm gonna try to tell an investment professional that they should be changing the investments which they're doing. So is there a way that the policies around, they can also provide some sort of incentive for us to be able to invest into those companies directly, just like how there's incentives for investing in a retirement annuity? What are the policies that kind of incentivize those green companies that are doing, even from a point of view of now, those who are investors and putting capital into this thing? Because you did state that there's about 8.5 billion that was invested, but that is small money because we need trillions. So how do we directly incentivize people to go in that direction, to build capacity so that the transition can be fastened? Yeah, thank you.
Should I take the first one? Okay, now thanks for that question. I think on the loan scheme and the COVID relief funds, Treasury with BASA, because we are DFI, you see, so the banks had sort of an arrangement or an agreement, if I can call it that, with the Banking Association. So this was really out of, the urgency of businesses struggling during COVID, the lockdowns, etc. So in terms of our understanding is just that in terms of the banks, being conservative as they are, they needed some sort of guarantee in terms of how can they continue doing business in line with their systems and their policies. So the guarantee came about where the 200 billion was actually as a guarantee to them to say, you guys can continue lending, but you don't need to take somebody's house or shares on the stock exchange or some sort of security. Here's a guarantee for you guys to continue assisting these businesses in order to, I think, save jobs, etc., continue the development of the economy. So the crux of it was really, I can say that the design, for me, it was really how they structured it, because these are facilities that should go quick. It's not something that you need to do hardcore due diligence on it. It's entrepreneurs that needs funding, that needs cash flow, because they can't export now their product. Some of them couldn't manufacture because it was locked down. So they needed that cash injection, that life, that blood in their business, so that they continue trading. So there was a lot of lessons learned. I mean, both sides, I think we should have actually thought it through, but nobody expected COVID. That's just the reality. But now with the bounce back, I think they call it loan scheme, it's a new approach to it. That's why they are more conservative. They're testing sort of the waters with the 20 billion. But if it really takes off, I think that should be the model that we should follow. I read a lot on different funding models. We have the blended finance model, but I saw this guarantee scheme. In Europe, it has been used for many years. In the States, they've been using it. I don't know, America just signs anything guarantee so that their businesses can still grow. So it's something, if we really get it right, it's really gonna make a huge, huge dent. Because most of the entrepreneurs are sitting with business plans. You just need that capital to get this thing off the ground. You just need that new machine, you need a little bit of working capital, and you need money for stock. But you know exactly your product that you're going to be making, and you know exactly who you're going to be selling it to. So I'm really of the view that if the design is right and the relevant stakeholders, are like-minded, and are also developmental, because with these programs, you need a little bit of patience. There's a lot of, school fees in the beginning, setting up the plant, but I think for us to localize our economy, this guarantee scheme is definitely the way to go. I hope I've answered the question.
Thank you for the opportunity. Standing here is Sive Matigizela. My question would add to the Provident Pension PIC fund, which is one of the biggest in Africa. Of recently, as of this month or maybe April, the Regulation 28 has been amended. It is amended for fund managers to increase allocation to offshore, property, equity, and bonds to 45% of each portfolio. So meaning that now it's moving from 30% to 45%. So more of our money is going offshore rather than being invested within the country. So in terms of us accessing finance, how is that possible? Already we lack finance, but our pensions, meaning that actually South Africa is a youthful country, that it's the youth's money actually going offshore at this moment, up to 45% of the portfolio of each individual. So how are we then going to be able to actually continue to get access to these finances for our own economic development? Because what's going to happen right now, everyone is happy that their money is going to go offshore because they're going to be exposed to Tesla, exposed to Netflix, which already is doing losses at the moment. And on top of that, the expense of buying equities offshore is quite high compared to buying equities on Naspers and the JSE. So we're literally losing a lot by the policy amendment itself. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, sorry, I think maybe I didn't drop my question. Sorry, I just made a statement there. My question is, how are we going to carry on getting finance if the policies themselves are moving in the opposite direction of what we need as investment young people in the country?
I'd like to take that, although it's a pity the Deputy Minister is not here to respond to it. But, from having worked a long time in financial markets, I can tell you that the change that's happened doesn't mean that all investment policies and mandates automatically adjust to it. So a lot of funds would not take a 45% exposure to international markets, which, by the way, includes Africa, because if you invest in offshore markets only, you're exposed to very high volatility from the currency exposure, because the rand is one of the most volatile and liquid emerging market currencies. So I don't think you should assume that money is going to flow out of the country. And going back to the question that was raised earlier about incentives, is any kind of incentive like a tax break on your contribution is effectively leakage from the system. So it's a way of transferring money. And what I was trying to say, which is picking up from Dr. Olver's point, is South Africa has a very well-established financial system. It's got a huge amount of capital in pension funds. And pension funds are effectively backing the banks as well. The difference between the pension fund and a bank is a bank is not rewarded for taking risk. It's rewarded for managing money very conservatively. And that's how it makes money. A pension fund has got very long-term obligations, a very long-term horizon, so it can take more risk. And that's why I was saying that I think this group should be putting pressure via, even if you're just writing into your retirement funds or to your long-term unit trust funds, you should be saying, we would like you to do more. We know you're going to write back to us and say, yes, we're doing SMME investing and this is how we do it. You should be saying it's not enough. We want you to do more. We want you to give us examples of how you're supporting us. We're a group of people as SAWAC who want to come and talk to you about opening more doors to young entrepreneurs who will stimulate the economy.
Okay, I've got the mic. Hi everyone, it's Ntabi Singh again. I have a list of questions. I'll start with the two gentlemen to the right. You did mention that we experience a lot of data issues in accessing your site and your app. is there any way that we could have the zero rated, as we have seen to be a trend with COVID? We've seen the rise of zero rated sites. So is that something that you could potentially look into to access more people? And then to the chair in the Presidential Climate Committee, you did mention the net zero economy and how we're not dancing to anyone's tune, but that is, we have limited control over external factors, such as Donald Trump quite recently, pulling out of the Paris Agreement. So what consequences did SA experience from such a abrupt withdrawal from the Accord? And I also had another question here. How can we prevent South Africa, or how can we rather protect South Africa against such events that we have little control over? Lastly, I did not want to mention the automobile industry changing in the coming years, with 2024 being a very pressing deadline. But since it was mentioned, I just wanted to find out what new skills are being predicted in the EV, the manufacturing of electric vehicles, and how are we translating that into institutions that still have majority of the youth in education? Yeah, that's it.
All right, thanks. I think I'll start with the data question, because it was such a huge challenge for us. And I think, yes, to answer your question, one of the remedial measures is that there's ongoing discussions and explorations as to how some of especially the critical services and the information-related stuff can actually be transferred into zero-rated data. So that is underway. Those are things that we're busy exploring. And in the meantime, what we've done in terms of the support, such as our training and mentorship models, we've built in the cost of data. So when we do these programs, we try and build the cost of data in, so that people that attend these trainings don't bear the cost of that. So we've got a longer term plan, which we're trying to address. That's obviously a longer conversation, because you need to have the discussion with the relevant providers. But in terms of what we can do, in terms of building it into our actual support programs, we've already looked into that, and we've already changed, and we have started to see better performance in terms of that.
Should I
Well, I think, can you clarify where were they addressed?
No.
Did you get the question?
Yeah, I got the question.
Okay.
All right. So look, we talk boldly about getting to net zero by about mid-century, and that's going to happen a little bit earlier in developed countries, and for developing countries, it's going to happen a little bit later. And that's partly because we've bought ourselves a bit of time in the international negotiations. But it's by no means going to be a smooth transition. And as you said, America's got this weird political system where every time the Republicans come into power, they can just tear up their climate agreements and withdraw from the UNFCCC. And let me be clear, America are the climate criminals in the system. They are the ones. 40% of the emissions in the atmosphere come from the historical emissions that the US economy has been emitting. So if anyone should pay for this thing, it's them. And that's partly why this 8.5 deal was put on the table, although by no means it's not enough. It doesn't cover the crimes that they've committed. But I want to use that example to illustrate this transition is going to be quite bumpy. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs, and it's going to move through a series of crises, which are going to, at moments, escalate prices and trigger very rapid change. And there's going to be a lot of politics in the transition. So, expect it to get rough. And what we need to do as a country to navigate these rough waters, and I'm taking a little bit of a leaf out of the Chinese playbook here. What the Chinese have been doing, they talk globally, they're going to delay the transition, they're only going to go net zero by 2016 or 2050. But while they're doing all of those international negotiations, they are rapidly building their local manufacturing base, and they're building it obviously in renewables. They've cornered the global market on solar PV. They're building it in battery technology. So, the world's leading battery technology companies are Chinese. They've been tapping into and lining up all the minerals for the future green economy. So they've accessed rare earths, they've got the world's lithium production, they've gone for vanadium, they've gone for nickel, cobalt, rare earths. The Chinese are serious. They're taking this game very, very seriously. And we need to do the same. What you don't want is to be caught at the end of the transition where we've done none of that building of our local manufacturing base, and suddenly we have to transition, and our economy will be devastated. So, in this game, move fast, lay the foundations so that you've got the flexibility to move as we go into the transition.
Thank you very much. One thing that the moderator said, just I guess in jest, is not knowing the difference between CFA and CEDA. And that moment was in jest, but imagine the people in the township, how they feel or how they are when it comes to recognizing these different entities that they need to tap into in order for them to get funding or training. So I think we need to put that in our minds, that it is a reality of a lot of Black and marginalized people in our township who seek to get funding. But moving forward to CEDA and CFA, as the councillor mentioned that he was able to write to the minister and get her to come down to the township and speak about the opportunities that your entities offer to the community, one of the things that the people mentioned, is that emails are not attended to. So you allow people to seek for funding, but then a response is not given to them. Secondly, to those who get a response, they get a response back saying you do not have the necessary documentation or you're not capacitated enough to get funding. Now that is a large chunk of our people. Now you went on roadshows with the minister on the district development model framework. You've gotten these issues raised to you. What are the practical steps going forward to say we are going to address these issues where emails are not being responded to, where a lot of people are not capacitated to gain the funding from your entities? From now on, I should feel that after the roadshow, you have a plan in place to say this is how we're going to respond. But I want to give you a solution to one of the problems that I raised. That is a councillor, a young one, who took an initiative of calling the minister and getting information to be dispersed to his community. How are you going to utilize those councillors like him to say, we're going to disperse information to you so that as the first point of call in the community, you can be able to disperse that information to the greater, larger group of business, informal and formal, in your communities? So can you tell us how we're going to utilize such people in the communities who are on the ground to have the information in hand when they apply to your entities? The people don't get responses back saying they're not capacitated, they don't have the necessary documentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, now thanks for that question. It's for those 3 pointers. I think it's quite, it's actually the crux of where CFA and CEDA is coming to. But there is a merger. So the merger has been approved by Cabinet, And I think we were targeted to have it concluded by the 1st of April. But because of the legalities of the two different entities, merging it into one entity. So CIFA will be merged into CEDA because of the footprint that CEDA has. So that will actually allow a one-stop shop for SMMEs. Instead of going from pillar to post, I mean, we know how it is. I mean, you come to CIFA, the deal is not ready, you have to go back to CEDA, you know, so that will bring much needed efficiency, and also it will also stimulate, you know, the progress of business development. So we would know exactly, you know, where the business is at with the colleagues at CEDA, and the CIFA colleagues will know exactly, okay, how we can capacitate this business in terms of unlocking capital, etc. So that's in the process. We expect it because of the, you know, there will probably be public opinions as well. You know, all of these legalities has to be followed. But from our principals, we received communication that it should be 1 year to 2 years to finalize the whole merger. I think there's probably going to be a lot of media statements surrounding the merger because it's going to be a groundbreaking. And the way government with national government with the different provinces, you know, how they are positioning now CIFA, CEDA is going to be the catalyst, you know, to ensure that SMMEs are positioned to grow the economy and contribute to job creation. The second thing, and I think Ravin and our colleagues will, the acknowledgement of applications, you know, this is something that sort of, and also just your responses to applicants. Because remember, we're in a space where we deal with a lot of, it's very voluminous, our applications. We get a lot of applications, and some of these applications really do fall through the cracks. But we have, as the agencies, we've decided we have to take it online. We want entrepreneurs to be in control of their own applications. So when an application is, and I think by the end of this month, or I think by mid next month, they should go live in terms of doing online applications. So when you do your application online, you would immediately get your acknowledgement. So you will be able to take the human element out of it, because we know that our administrators get these applications, some of them are falling through the cracks. So going online, and we have to embrace technology now. And like Ravin just said, that we're trying to also find ways how we can absorb those costs in terms of, you know, certain areas that doesn't have the necessary access. But we're trying to do online applications where it's easier to trace your application in terms of where's the application, what documents are still outstanding, so that we can see what are the challenges. I think...
I'll just take the last part. The question you raised in terms of the councillor and what work we're doing. And I think this is the crux of the district ecosystem facilitation model. And what the plan is with that is for CEDA as an ecosystem facilitator to actually help to capacitate and develop LED officials so that they're also able to then carry out some of this work. And that's at the heart of the matter, and it alludes to what I was saying earlier. It's about trying to take the unfragmented system and bring it together. So that's definitely something that's underway. It's not conceptualized, it's underway. And we in the Western Cape, we currently are working with province, and we're bringing city on board, and we're also looking then at other stakeholders in the ecosystem as itself to actually work together. So definitely it's something that's been considered and being implemented.
With that, I have to end our Q&A session. Thank you so much again to our speakers, but also to the audience. Thank you for being so focused. Your questions, I think, are what really made the session. So when you're giving our speakers a round of applause, I'll be giving you a round of applause. Please maintain that energy. We will be having a second session after the lunch break. I see the minister has just joined us, and we're also having other speakers in the second session. So please maintain this energy and stay on track. I think we are really doing work that matters here, and it's really inspiring to see young people taking their lives, their jobs, their businesses, their livelihoods so seriously and engaging here today. Thank you so much for attending this session.
Panelists, please do make your way to your seats, and thank you so much for joining us. We will head straight into a lunch break at this point in time. Lunch will be served upstairs at the restaurant. And can I please kindly ask that we all return back here at around 2:45? So yeah, we'll see you then. Thank you so much.